People at shooting ranges love to talk. They talk about rifles, targets, past missions, and big stories. But on one early spring morning in the quiet hills of Yorkshire, they were about to see something that would leave them silent. It started. Like any normal day at the Horseby Range Club, the place smelled of diesel fuel and wet grass. The sky was clear. Wind flags fluttered in the breeze. The old stone buildings looked like they'd been standing there since the war. This was not a place for playing. There were no zombie targets or rented guns, only serious shooters with serious experience. One man stood out the moment he stepped from his shiny black SUV. His name was Nathan Slade. He was tall, wide-shouldered, and loud. He wore a custom jacket with a flag patch and carried a huge rifle case that looked like it could hold a rocket launcher. Slade claimed to be an ex-Royal Marine. Now he ran his own tactical training company. He had fans on YouTube and talked like a man who wanted everyone to know how dangerous he was. He walked toward the shooting benches and shouted, "Right then, lads. Time to show the weekend warriors how real operators shoot." People turned to look. He smiled proudly. Nearby, a different kind of man stepped out of a plain gray Honda. His name was Reed Marlo. He didn't look dangerous. He wasn't tall or muscular. His black windbreaker and worn-out boots looked like he'd been walking more than driving. He didn't smile, didn't say much, just nodded to the range officer and walked to lane 8. No one knew Reed, at least not yet. He placed a canvas rifle wrap on the bench. Slowly, carefully, he opened it. Inside was a very old rifle, the L4-2A1. It was built of wood and metal. No scope, no attachments. It looked like something from a museum. Some younger shooters nearby snickered. Slade spotted him. Oh well. He laughed loudly. "Looks like someone brought Granddad's war trophy." More laughter followed. Slade wasn't just loud. He wanted attention. Reed didn't react. He didn't even look up. He just poured himself tea from a steel thermos and sat quietly, watching the wind flags. Slade turned to his group and unzipped his massive case. Inside was a high-tech black rifle, scope, bipod, suppressor, laser rangefinder. It had everything. He set it up like a man putting on a stage show. "This," he said, "is what proper shooting looks like." He shot 3 times. All 3 bullets hit steel targets at 400 meters. Ping, ping. People clapped. Slade explained each shot, turning the moment into a lesson about wind, distance, and real fieldcraft. Someone pointed at Reed. "Is that guy one of those Royal Guards with the big hats?" "Must be," said another. "Probably spends more time polishing boots than shooting." The laughter grew louder. Reed still didn't react. He sat still, drinking tea, watching the wind. His old rifle stayed untouched on the bench. But there was someone else watching him now, an older man with a gray beard and sharp eyes. He wore a wax jacket and had the calm, steady hands of someone who had fired many rifles before. Watched Reed quietly, not laughing like the others. Slade fired more shots. His confidence grew with each hit. "Let's be honest," he said. "Takes discipline to stand outside Buckingham Palace, but this," he waved at his rifle, "this takes real combat skill." Finally, Slade turned directly toward Reed. "All right then, Buckingham. You've been sitting there like a statue. How about a little demo? Show us what they teach you at the palace." Reed looked up, not angry, not annoyed, just calm. "I'm not here to compete," he said in a soft voice. But his voice carried. It didn't need to be loud. "Oh, come on, don't be shy," Slade said louder. "1 shot. Same distance I've been shooting. Let's see what that old rifle can do." Reed didn't reply. He looked back at the wind flags. The crowd around Slade began to drift away, losing interest. Slade's loud jokes weren't landing anymore. He was clearly getting frustrated. "I'll even let you use a proper scope," Slade shouted, laughing. "Can't have you missing because your relic can't see anything?" Still nothing from Reed. The older gray-bearded man stood up from his bench and moved slightly closer. Watching both men now with a look of quiet concern, Slade, desperate for attention, said one more thing. "Come on, mate. Palace guards get some rifle." Training, right? That's when Reed finally stood. He moved slowly, checking his rifle with calm hands. Then, he walked to the firing line. "One shot," he said quietly. 700 meters. Iron sights. The crowd turned. Everyone was watching now. The energy had changed. This no longer felt like a joke. It felt serious, and no one was laughing anymore. Everyone loves a show-on till the quiet man decides to speak, or in this case, shoot. The moment Reed Marlo stepped forward and said, "One shot, 700 meters. Iron sights," the entire range went still. No more jokes, no more laughs. Even the wind seemed to pause. Something had changed. He didn't move like someone showing off. He moved like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. No extra motion, no wasted energy. He didn't adjust his belt or flex his fingers or take a deep breath to act dramatic. He just lay down in the prone position like he had done it 1,000 times before. From the side, looked like he melted into the earth. He became part of the ground calm, steady and controlled. The rifle rested against his shoulder. His breathing slowed until it was barely visible. He looked downrange without a scope. Only iron sights. The range officer called out, 700 meters. Steel target active. Reed didn't respond. He didn't need to. He just watched the wind flags one last time. Nathan Slade leaned in, whispering to a younger shooter nearby. "He can't even see the target from here without optics, so be a laugh." But the older gray-bearded man wasn't laughing. He was watching Reed with a very different look, recognition. And maybe concern. Not for Reed, for what was about to happen to everyone else's pride. Then Red exhaled. Slowly, smoothly, and fired. The sound of the shot wasn't loud or wild. It was sharp, clean. It sliced through the air like a blade. Half a second later, everyone heard it, the distant steel target ringing with a loud, clear ping. Perfect hit, right in the center. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft flap of wind flags and birds chirping far away. Then, the range officer raised his binoculars, checked the target, and said what everyone was waiting for. Direct hit, center mass. 700 meters. Iron sights. Stood up slowly. He cleared his rifle with one smooth move, walked back to his bench, poured another cup of tea, and sat down like nothing had happened. Slade just stood there, his mouth slightly open. His rifle suddenly looked less powerful, less special. Older man stepped forward. This time, he spoke loud enough for all to hear. "Reed Marlo," he said, pointing toward the man with the teacup. 2 SAS Recon Troop, 4 tours. More confirmed kills than most squadrons combined. There was complete silence. Then someone whispered, "Jesus Christ." Now everyone was looking at Reed differently, not as a quiet guard or an old soldier with an old gun, but as someone who had seen things, done things, and didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Reed finished his tea. Calm as ever. The laughter was gone. The jokes had dried up. Slade's expensive rifle with all its gadgets now looked like a toy in comparison to Reed's simple iron sight weapon that had just outshot everything else on the range. One of the young lads near Slade finally asked, Who is he really?" The older man answered again. "That shot you saw? That's him taking it easy?" Everyone stood quietly, some with their heads down, some still staring at Reed, some looking at their own rifles, realizing they had a lot more to learn. But Reed didn't act like a hero. He didn't look proud. He didn't stand tall. He just cleaned his rifle like he always did, carefully, methodically, as if each piece was important, as if each shot mattered. 'Cause for him, they always had. One shot had changed everything. Slade had wanted to make a point, but Reed had made something better, a lesson. The kind that doesn't come from noise or showing off, the kind that comes from silence, skill and experience, and nobody would forget it. Sometimes, it only takes one moment to change how people see someone. Reed Marlo had taken one shot. The entire range saw him differently. Now, they weren't mocking him. They weren't laughing. They were watching with quiet respect, trying to understand how they had misjudged him so badly. The younger shooters stood nearby, still shocked. One of them, barely in his 20s, stepped forward. He looked nervous, but curious. He said quietly, "Can I ask about your rifle?" Reed looked at him, not annoyed, just calm. "What about it? It's an L-42, right? From the 1970s? I've only read about them. I've never seen one fired in person. How do you hit targets at that distance with just iron sights?" Reed thought for a second before answering. "You don't use the sights the way people think. You learn the feel of it. You know the wind. You know the distance. You know the drop. After a while, it's like driving a car. You don't think about the pedals, you just drive." The boy nodded slowly, trying to understand. He wasn't the only one listening now. More shooters were walking over. They weren't coming to laugh. They were coming to learn. An older man with club patches on his jacket stepped closer and asked, "Mind me asking what unit you served with?" Reed didn't hesitate. 22 SAS. Recon troop. Mostly some other things too. But those aren't worth talking about. The man's eyes widened. He nodded with respect. The gray-bearded veteran who had first named Rodolfo stepped closer. "Mac Henderson," he said, holding out his hand. "3 para, back in the day, Falklands, Northern Ireland." "I thought I recognized that signature." Reed shook his hand firmly. "Good to meet you, Mac." Mac looked around at the growing crowd and back at Reed. "These lads don't know, do they? What that shot really meant?" Reed gave a small shrug. "Just a shot." But Mac smiled grimly. "Just a shot. 700 meters, iron sights, cold barrel, wind in the air. That's the difference between success and a body bag." The younger shooters looked around, understanding more now. And this wasn't about showing off. This wasn't even about skill anymore. It was about real-world experience, about knowing that in the field, a mistake means someone dies. And Reed had made no mistake. Slade, who had been silent all this time, was still standing alone by his bench. He wasn't smiling now. He wasn't posing. He was cleaning his rifle slowly, his thoughts clearly somewhere else. Finally, he walked over. His voice was lower now, unsure. "Look," he said, "I didn't know. About your background, I mean." Looked up from his bench. "No reason you should have." Slade shifted uncomfortably. "What I said earlier about guards and ceremonial duty, it was out of line." Reed didn't smile or frown. "You saw the uniform. Made a guess? It happens." There was no anger in his voice, but no forgiveness either. Just a quiet fact. Slade tried again. "So you're really serving in the Guards now? After SAS?" Reed nodded. "The Royal Guard is a posting, not a step down. Most of us rotate from active units: paras, Marines, infantry, special forces. The ceremony is just the part people see." Nick stepped in again, nodding. "People think it's all marching and looking pretty. They don't realize those lads are still operational. Still real soldiers," Reed added. "You don't get posted to the palace by being neat. You get sent there because they trust you. You're holding a loaded rifle around heads of state. It takes a certain kind of training." The thought made the younger shooters look at each other. The toy soldier jokes didn't seem so funny anymore. One of them asked, "So when?" "You're guarding Buckingham Palace." "I'm an active duty soldier," Reed said, "with a loaded rifle, protecting the king, just like any security post. Only difference is the tourists and the camera flashes." The range had become quiet, not the usual kind of quiet. This was a quiet of understanding, of respect. No one had seen this coming. They had laughed at the man in the simple coat with the old rifle. Now, they realized he was the most dangerous. Man there, Slade remained quiet. He looked down at his expensive rifle, then at Reed's simple gear. His earlier pride was gone. He'd come to impress. Yes. But he had been taught a powerful lesson. Not through shouting, not through showing off. Through silence, through skill, through truth. Some lessons stay with you forever. The best ones often come from the people who say the least, as the sun began to lower over the hills. Reed Marlo quietly packed up his rifle, the same old L42A, one that had just changed the mood of an entire shooting range. Each part of the rifle was cleaned and placed into its canvas wrap with careful hands. Like a craftsman finishing his work around him, the energy had completely changed. People were quiet, thoughtful, not because they were bored, but because they were still thinking about what they had just seen. One shot iron sight 700 meters, and not just the shot, but the man behind it. A young shooter, maybe 19 or 20, walked up to Reed again, this time with even more respect in his voice. "Sir," the boy said, "thank you for the demonstration. And for telling us about the guards, I had no idea." Reed looked at him, calm as always. "No need for thanks. Maybe just remember it next time you see someone in ceremony uniform." "I will, sir," the boy said quickly. Then added, "My grandfather was Topora," he used to say. "The loudest soldier in the room usually isn't the most dangerous one." Reed gave the smallest smile. "Your grandfather was a wise man." The boy nodded and walked away. But Reed could feel more eyes on him now. Not staring, not curious, just quiet, respectful watching. The kind that comes from understanding something important had just happened. Mac Henderson, the older gray-bearded veteran, stood by the range office smoking a cigarette. He watched Reed with approval, his face calm. Round him, small groups of shooters were gathered, talking in low voices, but not about scopes or gear anymore. They were talking about Reed. Slade, who had been the center of attention earlier, was now completely silent. He was still cleaning his expensive rifle, but his movements were slow, distracted. His mind was somewhere else. Probably replaying the moment when Reed hit the steel target with no optic sand, no effort. Reed closed the boot of his car, placing the rifle case inside with the same calm care he'd shown all day. He was ready to leave. But just as he opened the driver's door, Mac walked over. "Reed," he said. Reed turned. "Good shooting today. Thanks, Mac." Mac took a slow puff from his cigarette. "I've been coming to this range for 15 years, seen weekend warriors, competition shooters, ex-military, everything. But I've never seen anyone make a point the way you did today." Reed shrugged. "Wasn't trying to make a point. Just took a shot." "Bollocks," Mac said, smiling gently. "That was the most educational thing to ever happen here." "Huff. Those lads are going to go home tonight and think differently. It's about service, about showing off, about what real skill looks like when it doesn't need to shout." Reed thought about that. Maybe that's not a bad thing. "Definitely not," Mac said, then held out his hand. "It was an honor, mate." Genuinely. Reed shook his hand. Firm, quiet respect passing between two soldiers. He got into the car and started the engine.
Ow.
As he reversed, he saw Mac still standing there, now surrounded by curious shooters. Mac was pointing downrange, probably explaining how difficult that shot had really been. That was good. Let them learn. Let them understand the kind of soldier who didn't need fancy gear or loud stories. Just silence. Training gained purpose. Reed turned out of the gravel lot and drove down the narrow Yorkshire road. The land around him was peaceful. Stone walls, quiet fields, distant sheep, calling across hills. He would be back in London soon, back to his normal routine. In a few days, he'd be standing at one of the gates near Buckingham Palace, wearing the bright red tunic and bearskin cap. Tourists would take photos, children would giggle. Some people would try to make him laugh or break his stance. They'd call him a toy soldier. They'd never know. And that was exactly how it should be, because the man standing guard wasn't just for show. He wasn't just decoration. He was a real soldier, a sniper, professional. Someone who had learned his skills in deserts and mountains, not for applause, but for survival. And even though the world didn't always notice men like him, the people at the Horseby Range Club would remember. One shot had been enough. The lesson was simple. Real strength never needs to announce itself.